All right, that's recording, I hope. Okay, so welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm here with Cristina Boscariol, and she has generously given up her time today to discuss with us her experience with the McLoughlin Scar Tissue Release Technique. From now on, I'll actually refer to it as MSTR because it is a bit of a mouthful. Welcome, Cristina.
Thank you, Gail. How are you?
Good, thanks. So, Cristina, you were involved in a serious car accident, biking car accident, some 20 years ago.
Yes.
And I was wanting you to tell us your journey and your story, and how others could possibly see in the future how MSTR might actually benefit them and enhance their lives as well.
Sure.
Great. All right, so let's talk about the accident first. Would you mind telling us what actually happened and when, and what actually occurred at the time?
Okay, so I had a biking accident. I was on my way to work, travelling in Brisbane, and I actually hit a taxi on my bike, and I landed on the bonnet, and then I fell off. And as I landed on the road, a semi-trailer basically ran over my leg and basically braked and stopped on my leg. And subsequently, I had major trauma to my knee. I lost a third of my fibula, my tibia, the surrounding tissue in my knee, the tendons, some ligaments, and I broke my femur.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was 20 years ago?
Yes, so 20 years ago, yes.
Right. So what was the medical intervention at the time? I understand from our previous conversations that they actually didn't remove the truck until the medicos got there?
No, they did move the truck off my knee because like obviously my leg just ballooned just through the shock. So I was in the RBH in Brisbane for approximately 3 weeks, where I went through about 6 operations in a matter of like the 2 weeks. And so initially they put a rod through my femur just to secure that. I had a number of operations on my knee because basically it was down to the bone, so I had lost all my surrounding muscle and skin. So they basically, it was quite innovative actually. They used a muscle flap from one of my calf muscles, flipped it over and used that as basically the protective covering of my bone. And we did some plastic surgery, so used part of my back of my leg as the donor.
This is your left leg?
My left leg, yeah, donor location for the skin graft. So I had skin grafts done. So that was pretty much it. So that was about 5 operations that I had in 2 weeks, and then subsequently some years later I had some additional plastic surgery done on my knee.
Okay, great, thank you. So the site of the actual scar, as you say, is your right leg.
Yes.
Predominantly most of that scarring occurs on the inside of the leg and to the back of the leg.
Yes.
What other interventions were put in place to actually find enough tissue, for instance, when enough muscle for your flap, and the actual plastic surgery? What occurred in those situations?
Okay, so as indicated before, they used one of my muscles in my calf to provide the cushioning, I suppose, or coverage above the bone, and then they could do the plastic surgery, the skin graft. Years later, about 5 years after the operation, the accident, I subsequently grew some additional skin. So that way, at that time, what they did was they inserted a balloon underneath my skin, underneath my arm, and every week they would inject some saline just to grow the skin until there was sufficient additional skin coverage, where they could then reuse that skin and provide a better coverage on my knee.
Right. So how long did that actually take for them to actually grow that skin and so that they had sufficient enough to do that?
So that took about 4 to 6 weeks.
Right. Okay, so it was quite an intense and very, very swift process for that.
Yes.
What did you experience during that time, it not being the original site of the actual accident?
Mm.
What sensations?
So there's certainly a lot of discomfort, particularly at the time where the weekly injections took place, because obviously they're stretching the skin.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of pain because like you're stretching something that hasn't got to give, I suppose. And then eventually the skin does stretch to the allocated liquid, I suppose.
Great, thank you for that. Okay, so and then after you've had all the intervention done and we've had the subsequent plastic surgery, what rehab or support systems did they put in place for after that accident?
So obviously my leg was in a brace because I had a broken femur. So my brace was on for about I think approximately 8 weeks. So after that, obviously there was a lot of scar tissue in the knee because like the knee joint hadn't been moved. So a lot of scar tissue had set in, and that resulted that I couldn't bend the knee. So there was a lot of intensive rehab through physiotherapy, trying to actually get the knee bending, I suppose. Because
so it really impacted your life with range of movement and daily activity.
Most definitely, So there was no driving. Obviously I couldn't drive, couldn't do all my physical activity that I was used to doing, going to the gym, running, cycling and so forth. So it was quite a long rehab process.
Right, and in total that rehab process?
It certainly took over a couple of years, I'd say. And mentally, well, that took even longer, I suppose.
Yeah. So let's talk about that emotional impact. And like at the time of the accident when it occurred, how did you feel emotionally and psychologically with?
I think at the time of the accident, psychologically I was quite strong because I was quite active and quite fit. So the body was able to, I suppose, protect me. Certainly at the time when I was in hospital, I didn't acknowledge that I was sick because to me I wasn't sick as such. You know, I had just you know, had an accident, so I wasn't ill, so I shouldn't be in there.
Sure.
So that was, I think, my way of trying to support myself and try to get myself through each day, because at the end of the day it was a 3-week process that I was in hospital. So I didn't see that I was ill, but obviously that by, I suppose, not coming to terms with what actually happened, that prolonged the long-term mental recuperation, I suppose, because I found myself years later that I did need some assistance, like from the psychological and emotional assistance.
And that was put in place for you through the hospital, or did you seek that out yourself?
No, I was quite lucky through work. I had a very good rehab officer who was able to engage and put me in touch with someone.
Fantastic, that's great. Okay, so with the support mechanisms for the trauma, so from an MSTR point of view, were there any feelings of anxiety or that you were at fault of that accident or anything like that? Yeah,
definitely. So you know, so like you certainly relive the accident over and over again. And I'd say for the first 2 years, that was quite intense. And certainly shortly after the accident, you know, when I was reliving the accident, you know, I was blaming myself because it was my fault, and you know, you do blame yourself, and you know, what if scenarios always came up. So
So talking about the actual scar sites now, what's the emotional? If you touch those areas, do you have any emotional attachment to them, or feelings or sensations that occur still, particularly on the one under the arm, and then you also had the back of the leg?
The donor sites.
The donor sites, that's right.
So certainly the initial donor site where the skin graft was taken, that was very, very sensitive for quite a long time, until I'd say like at least 2 years. It was quite noticeable as well, you know, because it's been 20 years now, so like that site isn't noticeable, but initially it was very, very sensitive, and once you touched it, like that came, you know, because it was quite raw red, basically. You're just shaving your skin off. The knee was very, very sensitive, and certainly through the use of coming to yourself and doing Bowen therapy and your techniques. That certainly has alleviated a lot of the sensitivities.
Fantastic,
there, which has been good.
Great. All right, and so then we move on to the actual experience of the scar tissue release work that I've done for you. Before the actual MSTR, you had range of movement restrictions.
Yes.
And tightness. We know had noticeable photos of the tautness in the actual skin and the area, the scar area.
Definitely.
Right. So how does that improve now since you actually had?
Well, certainly those areas, particularly in this area here, the indentation isn't as noticeable. It's certainly far more softer than what it was before. It was quite hard.
Yes.
And yeah, it's like there's more colour in the site area, and there's certainly
because it was quite pasty, very pasty looking before.
Yes,
wasn't
it was. Yeah, and there was a lot of I suppose crunching up of the skin because of the particular angle where they've tried to sew up, I suppose,
and attach everything.
And attach everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And once it was, I'm near sure it was after the very first time that we actually did the technique, we could see the blood flow, and you actually felt sensation in other parts of your body.
Yes, that's right. So when you were actually doing the technique, I could actually feel the sensations going both up and down my knee. So that was something that I hadn't felt beforehand, and certainly in a lot of those areas I've got now new sensation, whereas before that wasn't there.
And your range of movement has improved?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Yeah, fantastic.
Been good.
All right, so how does it feel now if you touch those scars since having the treatment?
They're much softer. They're not as sensitive.
Emotionally, is it?
No.
No?
Emotionally, I've got no more emotions to it. I think cried out and emotioned out, I suppose.
Yeah.
But certainly, it's definitely a vast improvements. My family have certainly noticed the difference.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So, and even like people have not even known that you're having the treatment, they've seen.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Beautiful.
There's definitely an improvement in the scar area.
Lovely. Okay, so did you feel that you were well supported through this process before and after we started it?
Yes, most definitely,
yeah. And the support messages made you fully aware of the consequences that potentially things could come up again,
yes,
that sort of thing?
Yep.
And you had mechanisms in place to deal with that afterwards?
Yes.
Fantastic, great. Okay, so are there any other observations or outcomes that you may feel that would be beneficial to a potential client who is thinking about, hey, would this might actually work for me?
Yeah.
Anything that maybe me as a practitioner could actually enhance on, or other information that might be of use to them?
Yeah. Well, certainly I think, I'm blown away because my site that you worked on is certainly not a fresh injury, and I'm always one to give something a go. I'm certainly a believer in Bowen therapy, and when you asked me whether could you do some work on that, I was just blown away because after 20 years, no matter how much massaging I could do, particularly in the early years, hasn't achieved the result that you've achieved.
That's amazing.
So something that's a scar tissue and a scar injury that's been so old, to actually be rejuvenated is amazing.
And now we've got more sites to work
yes.
on.
we do indeed.
So it's probably been 8 weeks since we stopped treatment and that sort of thing now, and it has continued, it's stayed and it's held.
Yeah, it's held, it hasn't gone back, which has been great. So
yeah, it just looks beautiful. Yeah, it really does, and the colour through it is just...
It's all even.
Yeah,
whereas
it's very
before
much so.
It was a bit pink and it was puckered up and... So yeah, definitely much better.
Now we will actually take a close-in shot. I'll get Cristina to stand up in a moment so you can actually see what's occurring, what had occurred, and the size of the scar. We're not just talking about a small scar. We're pretty much talking about a good 1/3 to 2/3 of her leg. And so yeah, finally, it's been great to chat with you. Thank you very much for giving up your time. I so appreciate this. If you actually would like to find out more, you can go onto my website at www.sumetbowen.com, and there's information on there on the McLoughlin Scar Tissue Release Technique, or you can just give me a call. My number is on the site as well, and we can have a confidential chat. Again, Cristina, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and if you don't mind, if we can stand up, and we'll just see if we can get the camera to capture this. I'll get you to put your leg up onto this chair maybe.
Okay.
And we'll come in a bit closer, guys. So I'm just going to come right in close and just move the camera a bit. So as you can see, that is quite an extensive scar just on this area. Sorry, I'll just bring this camera a little bit closer. You can see quite an extensive, and it extends right in under the back of the leg as well. But I will put up before and after shots of our treatment for Cristina. Have a seat, please.
Thank you.
And just thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks very much,
Thank you. Lovely.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm so glad it's been, just have a seat there. I'm just so glad it's been of such tremendous benefit to you. Yeah.
I'm very, very grateful to you.
Yeah.
Thanks
Lovely.
very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks everyone. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye.